is it a good time to plant trees? The wisdom is, the best time was 20 years ago. And the second best time is now. So I'd like to compliment CPPR and Ministry of External Affairs for doing something now, which could have been done 20 years ago. India's relationship with the Gulf countries is something that's led by our people. It's a people-to-people relationship, which now the governments are trying to catch up with. It's a long civilizational connect, and the fact that we have about 9 million Indians out there has been repeatedly mentioned since yesterday, shows the importance of that connection for us. So it's not merely a matter of the number of people there, it is the economic content of that relationship. In 2013, when I went to UAE as India's ambassador, the then Crown Prince and now President, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, told me, Ambassador, India has no time for this region. You're constantly preoccupied with your domestic issues and elections one after the other. Given any time, you have elections in India that keep you busy. And when you look towards the West, you look beyond us and use us only as a transit point. And third, you tend to look at us through a prism called Pakistan and judge us in terms of your views about that country and our relationship with that country. We were able to change that perception in 2015, about 10 years ago, when Prime Minister Modi came on his visit to UAE, 34 years after Srimati Indira Gandhi's visit in 1981. But in 2015, during that visit, we were able to negotiate a joint statement with 31 action points and announced that our relationship would be a comprehensive strategic partnership. And that is the roadmap we have been following since. I also remember when I was negotiating that document with Dr. Anwar Gargash, the Minister of State for Foreign Affairs, we came to a paragraph about investment. And I had a draft from the Indian side which said we would like investment of $75 billion in 5 years. Very ambitious projection 10 years ago. And Dr. Gargash said, $75 billion not a problem. But can you delete the words in 5 years? Because even if I come with a bag of $75 billion, would your economy be able to absorb it? Now, looking back now, I find that over 20 years, last 20 years, UAE investment adds up only to about $19 billion. So there's a lot more work to do, and that is what this discussion is about. So let me begin. I thought I should introduce each one of you, but that's already being done on the screen. And more details about each one of these eminent panelists is already available with you and online. So let me begin with Mr. Atul Puri. And let us know your views on which direction our engagement with these countries are progressing, particularly in view of this CEPA, which has been signed with UAE, and the PTA that we are talking about signing with GCC, and on which we are already engaging with Bahrain, Oman, Kuwait, etc., bilaterally as well.
So a very good morning to all of you. So I'll break this into two portions. First one is with respect to India-UAE, SEPA and FTA, which was signed. SEPA was signed on 1st May 2022. The reason behind that was to understanding the corridor and the investment and trade relations between the two nations. And to improvise that, there was a need to improve the commodity import and export between the two countries. About 97% of the goods have been on the tariff list, so which has about 10,000 or more than 10,000 items, which economizes the tariff rates or the taxes which are being levied on it. Now, how has this actually been very successful? Basically, the trade relation between India and UAE has jumped by more than 53% over these last 2 years. So there has been a considerable increase in the trade and considerable increase in the economic relations. Sir has already mentioned about the exceptionally great investment which has been coming in. Second point is related to what about the other GCC nations. So Saudi Arabia, UAE and Oman remain the largest, some of the largest trade partners. So where UAE is the third largest and Saudi Arabia is the fourth largest trade partner, both import and export. Although India still remains a net importer when it comes to oil and natural resources. So SEPA has definitely played a very important role, and the FTA with GCC has been interfacing a lot of challenges over the last couple of years. It has been into discussion with all the GCC nations, and there have been reasons why there have been delays in implementation of the FTA with consolidated FTA with the GCC nations. Primarily, you can say because of the geopolitical disturbances from Hamas and Israel war, and also from the Red Sea disturbances, which keep this entire discussion on the table. So also what we say about the relationship between the Indian diplomatic officials has to be improvised so that the FTA can be brought into the picture as soon as possible. And this can, as soon as possible, because this is already under discussion, and once this is implemented, it will improvise the trade relation between other GCC countries also. And we, as I do a lot of consulting for corporates who are trading with these nations, we keep getting queries that what about the taxes with other countries in GCC, where there is no change, there is no advantage, or there is no significant benefit which is being given or passed on to the exporters from India. So this remains a question mark, and this has to come to a conclusion very soon. The government officials are working, the government of India and the chief coordinator from the GCC nations are already in discussion now. It has been revived, and this should see the daylight very soon. And we are hoping that once this happens, probably the trade relations between the nations, all the 7 nations will come to a very great start as soon as possible. Thank you.
Since you have just arrived this morning from Bahrain, and you have played a very significant role in the business environment in Bahrain and relations with India, what are the steps that you think we can take, both in terms of enhancing our bilateral relationship and between India and GCC as a region?
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, dear. I think that we have to concentrate more on different activities and areas of businesses. Well, we know that our governments are strongly related together, and we have to promote among the business people and private sector for the deals which is happening and for the MOUs which is signing between all the GCC government and India. So we know that from past and now and future, we have a strong plan through governments, but I think the private sector should move faster in technology, cyber security, food sector, tourism sector, health, and we believe that we did, as we discussed this morning, that we don't need the figures and percentage of the volume of the deals which is done between GCC and India. We think that Indians are living in GCC. They are there as a resident, and families are there, while private sector, they are investing in India, but we are looking forward to have more increment in different sectors of businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to Mr. Mehta, you represent PhD Chamber of Commerce and Industry with a very large membership of industry. What do you think needs to be done to further enhance India's investments in these countries? Is there a lot of interest? What would be the hurdles, if any, the challenges that have to be overcome?
Thank you very much. First of all, good morning to everyone. We had a very, very impressive keynote address by Admiral Ashok in the morning, emphasizing on water security. 80% trade is through water. I would say that, like 70%, 79% of our earth is covered with water only. So therefore, it is all the more very, very important. Thank you, Admiral Ashok, for that keynote address in the morning. Secondly, now, if you look at GCC countries, particularly right now, the UAE and India, the CEPA agreement which was signed, I think it stands as a landmark initiative, for the economic synergy and shared, vision of both the nations. As around 80% of products in this CEPA agreement, the duty has been removed. And India benefits a lot because around 90% of our products which go to UAE, they are not having any duty as of now, particularly for jewelry and the small, MSMEs and all. It is going to benefit a lot to them, and engineering products as well. Secondly, this kind of agreement, when it becomes an institutionalized mechanism, it gives a lot of market access to Indian MSMEs. India is having more than 65 million MSMEs, and most of, 90% of these companies are micro enterprises. I think that it opens door for the huge MSME sector that we have. It's a greater market access. So this CEPA also has a proper mechanism to safeguard the intellectual property rights, number one. Number two, there is a proper mechanism for the dispute resolution. So these things, and there is a helpline for under this agreement. I think this is further going to enhance the trade. CEPA had a vision to have around $100 billion of trade between UAE and India in 5 years. But let me tell you, this year so far, we have already crossed $48 billion till first half of this financial year. So I think that though it was envisioned that by 2027 we will have $100 billion of trade, I think that by this financial year end in 2025, we would have crossed around $100 billion. This is what I expect. Because there's a jump of around 35% in the trade between UAE and India as of right now. as you know, like with UAE and other GCC countries, there has been they have been our natural trade partners. We have had an opportunity of taking delegations in all these countries when you were the ambassador at Saudi and of course at UAE, and then Mr. Ahlam is here. So we have been interacting. So it is the personal contact between people. Ultimately, the businesses are done between people to people. Countries can create an enabling environment. They can have a mechanism for doing that. Ultimately, the businesses will be to be done only between people to people. And when we meet very frequently in a platforms like this, I think that enhances the trade. And today, I am very happy to say first of all, I also thank Dr. Dhanuraj for having me here, as PHDCCI is celebrating 120 years of existence, and I see that CPPR is having 20 years. So the organization with legacy and a forward-thinking organization like CPPR. Our organization was in 20th century, I think CPPR in 21st century. That makes a forward-looking statement from these two organizations. If we come together like this, I think these are the initiatives which can even further enhance the trade, and we can create these kind of platform where more and more people can participate, engage, collaborate, and create value for their businesses, for their nations. It's a great initiative. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dhanuka, we recently had a visit by our Prime Minister, I believe after a gap of 43 years. What do you think will change in our relationship with Kuwait, and what direction?
Thank you, sir. This is Aditya Dhanuka from Kuwait, and it's a pleasure to share the panel with you, being the moderator and other colleagues. The PM visited Kuwait on 21st and 22nd December 2024. And the starting of his speech, he said, it took 43 years for a Prime Minister to come to Kuwait, whereas it just takes 4 hours flight to come from India. So that speaks volume, and he's a very good orator and connects with the audience for sure. So just to tell you how beautifully it was designed, his visit, to tell you the engagement between people and the administration. The first day was a Saturday, 21st. He kept that day exclusively for the community. He came in, he met, there were around 250 people who welcomed him. Then from there, after the welcome, he went to meet the labor camp, the people working in one of the companies there. And then there was a community event planned for him for around 4,500 people. So that day was very good engagement by him, and he kept his people very happy with that engagement. And then he was invited as guest of honor for the Arabian football happening by the Emir. And day 2 was the day where the major activities happened between the countries, between both the countries. So day 2 he met the Emir and the Prime Minister along with the Foreign Minister of Kuwait. There are various agendas being discussed, and trust me, visits like this moves the mountain. It builds trust, and I think primarily it's more about opinions. So, once a visit of a Prime Minister happens, as you said in 2015, 34 years later, a Prime Minister visited, you can imagine 43 years is a longer period that the country has been waiting to have any Prime Minister, and it's not my affection towards the current Prime Minister, it's about country to country reciprocal relation. We had visits by the Dr. Jai Shankar as well in the past to set things up, but trust me, I had never witnessed something like this, we felt very proud, that's the sentiment that an average Indian felt there. So again, it's all about the trust, it's all about the opinions which can move the mountain. And talking about the various joint working groups that were being discussed, to focus a few, there were joint working groups for trade, investment, education, skill development, science and technology, security, counter-terrorism, agriculture, culture. and there were few already there, health, manpower, hydrocarbon. So when these kind of things happen, a lot of focus moves in there. Right now, if I put some numbers, Kuwait has a population of around 4.9 million overall, out of which 1 million are Indians, right? So we've always been known as a friendly nation and law-abiding, I would say, residents in the country. And having said that, the current business that happens there is around $10 billion between India and Kuwait. So which has grown from, I would say, if I have the numbers in front of me, 1.56 billion in 22-23 to 2.1 billion. So it's almost 35% growth. So this is before his visit, and we can see there's a lot happening. But net, we are an importer, as we know. India has been a net importer of the energies from that. So primarily, sir, the vision is great. We can see things moving in the right direction. This will certainly foster to improve the relations between the two countries. Thank you.
Mr. Ajay, Thampy, you run a shipping business. What are the challenges, especially for this particular region in that sector? And do you think the kind of CIPA, FTA and so on, which bring in hopefully long-term transparency and dependability in terms of long-term relations, how would that impact the shipping business?
Good morning, Kochi, because I come from this place, so it's like a host for all of you, and warm welcome and fantastic initiative, and thank you, Mr. Dhanuka, for the invitation to be a panelist. I come from this breed, maybe shipping. You all know that containerization started from Cochin. So maybe at 3 decades I can just take it back. And being part of a British company like P&O, and then it became the first merging company like with UK and Dutch P&O and Lloyd. And from a shipping, then into a logistics, a supply chain. We took this as a career, maybe from this region. We all know that, that we all are spread out in GCC. But then what I would suggest, mention is that, at that stage to this stage as an entrepreneur, what is that practicality we have put in as people to people or the businesses? So supply chain or the shipping is really taken off in its own journey, where there were this long hauls, but then India to all these GCC, we call it the short hauls. So in the short hauls, there was this non-vessel operating companies, which are not the major shipping companies, but then these non-vessel operating companies also invested in a lot of these exchange of containerization into each of these countries. But then each of these countries are also landlocked into the larger markets. So that gave us more opportunity to service, and India being neutral, it has opened up a lot of avenues into shipping as a career. And then came maybe a bumper for all of us. In a negative term, it can be treated as COVID. But then that spiked the whole industry, and maybe it is not a white collar job, but then that opened how logistics and supply chain can be there when, as long as mankind is there, it is all there. So a lot of things have happened, not just on the shipping fraternity, where all these connects have happened, but then it opened up a lot of supply chain, because all these middlemen, shipper to the consignee, it actually opened up by giving the visibility. How did this visibility happen? Because IT also was not maybe one of the lowest guys who were in the whole segment in the industry. But then once COVID all hit up, IT became one of the largest investment in each of these, whether you can term it as small, medium or long term guys, they all invested and made world become very small. So that opened up a lot of visibility, which is giving us it was earlier the major carriers who were giving up that visibility, but then the small guys also started investing in this IT. That made the quality output into each of these industries, because it is not that we are servicing one industry, we are servicing in and out, because India is again a balance of trade. It is an ocean of raw materials, whether it is finished products, the knowledge. Even the state of Kerala recently, it was actually marketing the knowledge. So Vizhinjam, even if it is a new port which is going to have a various dimension, even Kochi also has a transshipment, it is not again competing each other. Every infra, because DP World has invested in Kochi, that doesn't mean that okay, it is going to take off one-sided approach, but then it is not just the EXIM trade, because India is developing in all aspects of the infra also. So there is, even when you take a state of Kerala, there is a lot of movement from north to south. So that also caters to the output of all these finished products into the GCC also. And then again, you take Dubai 2020, you take the Qatar World Cup, now Saudi is also coming up with NEOM. It is all going to be enormous opportunity, not just on, maybe I am representing shipping and logistics, but it is an enormous in terms of finding out the infra. So that way, shipping industry is definitely benchmarking ourselves on the development. And when Admiral Ashok mentioned about maybe the economy also, we are also always part of the economy. There are various products which is again the Prime Minister project, which is all getting streamlined and empowering the small harbors in India. It is all giving opportunity to take care of the coastline. And again we talk about the east and west, but then India as a powerful nation, it's not just Asian, because we have a very good trade between Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, which is all termed as the future, Indonesia, India. So the region itself is going to cater, and there are new concepts like the SCZ, free trade zones. This is all going to ease the operation and the reach to all these regional countries. So shipping and logistics, again I just want to stress, will be the front runner for the massive scale of development in this region.
Thank you. Coming back to you, Mr. Puri, you are an expert on taxation. And what should our business people be aware of in terms of practical aspects of taxation in our relationships?
Yeah, so I'll touch upon the treaty, what we call as a double taxation avoidance agreement. Let me go back into the history when this idea was first conceived in the world. So way back in 1889, it was the first time that Prussia, now Germany and Hungary entered into a treaty. The reason was to support the trade and investment between the two nations, to avoid the cascading effects of double taxation when there is a business happening between two nations. So with that as a thought process, a lot of other countries also started coming up with the concept of double taxation avoidance agreement treaties, and India also followed the same. India signed the first treaty in 1985 with Korea and in 1989 with US, followed by other nations. Today, India has one of the largest bundle of tax treaties which is signed with over 94 countries. Now, how does it help? How does it work? I'll come to the GCC reference to the context, but let me set the base first. So, how does this treaty help? So, globally there are three models which are applicable for a treaty to be in place. So, one is a US model, one is a UN model, and one is the OECD model. So, United States has their own model. Model, when I say, is that there is a standard law which is defined for creating a treaty between two nations. US says that I want my own way, so that is why I have my own format. You need to follow that. If you want to do trade and if you want to have a relationship or a trade relationship with me. OECD is primarily for the developed nations or Europe. Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. So they came up with their own set of rules and regulations. Now there were other developing and emerging countries so that undue advantages are not taken because we are the consuming countries. So for that, United Nations came up with a different model, which was to give the tax due to the developing nations, because we are the consuming countries. We were not net manufacturers at that point of time. Today India is an emerging economy and soon to envisages to be a developed economy. So these are the three models which are in existence. So I'm just giving a reference to the context, and that's how India follows primarily the UN model. So we all our treaties which are designed are with these 94 nations are under the foundation stones of the United Nations model. Same now replicates with the GCC countries. As on date, we have signed agreements with all 5 nations except for Bahrain, which is already in discussion and should be in place. So how does it impact now? So when there is when as the world is becoming more and more consolidated when it comes to business and trade relations with each other, when there is any economic transaction which is happening, there is a tax which automatically becomes due. So there is a dispute which comes in on that, on top of that, which country has the right to that tax. And every country wants to enhance their share of tax on it so that it's for their betterment and economic development. So in order to define those rules and so that there are no disputes, and it is not the business community who is ultimately suffering because one country or the other country, they want their share, they don't know this is my tax, this is my tax. There are rules which are defined. That is why every country has to respect, once a treaty is entered, it is over and above the domestic law of that country. So that bilateral agreement becomes a law which is on top of the domestic law. So that even the tax departments or every business community or every country needs to respect the law, respect the bilateral agreement for any kind of transaction which is happening. And I'll just give a couple of examples to specific transactions which happen. Like I talk about India-UAE treaty. In this, there are say certain categories of income which are defined. Say you have interest, dividend, fee for technical services and royalty. This is something which are defined under the articles for India-UAE treaty, and in this case, what happens? Supposing there is a royalty income which is generated from a company in UAE, in that case, how will the taxation work in this? So there is a relaxation which is given so that as on date, even for a company in UAE, you need to pay 9% CID if it is above 750,000 dirham. So when you pay that 9% tax on that, that income comes to India, you again pay tax on it. So to avoid that, this treaty is there, and where this specific article gives you the immunity that you do not, if you have paid a tax in your source country, then you are eligible to take a credit. Same, it works for dividend, similarly it works for interest. So there is a lot of funding in the form of sovereign bonds which has come to India from Saudi, from KSA, from UAE and from Kuwait. Now, from Oman, sorry, and this actually is eligible. There are specific exemptions which have been given to these countries because of the G2G relationship. But if supposing there is no such special exemption which is given to those countries, in that case the treaty comes into as a savior, so that you do not pay double taxation. Now, supposing you have paid taxes in both the countries because that's the law of that country, how does it help you to save on the taxes, or what is the mechanism? So there is a concept of foreign tax credit which is available. So supposing you have paid tax for a certain transaction in Saudi Arabia, when you bring that money to India or vice versa, supposing you pay taxes in India, because India has a very strong withholding tax concept. We all are aware what we call it as a TDS. So whether it is a salary income or a commission or a brokerage or professional income, whatever you pay, TDS is deducted on it. Similarly it works in global scenario also. So when it is a cross-border transaction happening, even in that case also there is a concept of withholding tax which is applicable. So the moment there is a tax which is levied in the source country, because source country says, boss, you have to pay tax to me. You cannot take the money out without paying taxes. And this concept is applicable in Saudi Arabia as well. So when you pay taxes in the source country and bring the money to India, Indian government says, okay, I will allow you a credit to the extent of the tax you are paying on this income in India. So if you are not paying any tax on this, supposing it's a special exempted income, in that case you are not eligible for foreign tax credit. So no government gives you a refund of a tax which is paid in the foreign jurisdiction. But you are eligible for a credit on the same income if you are paying a higher tax in India. That's how globally it works. This is the global concept which is being followed for foreign tax credit. So with this sums up the entire, in a very crisp and a short manner, that how the entire treaty network works within the countries and globally. Because as you know, our honorable Prime Minister has also said Vasudeva Kutumbakam. So it's basically one world which is now, the global businesses are growing. We are consolidating. Distances are something different, but the economy is really dependent. We are all dependent on each other. Whether it is India or any other country or a GCC, or we are somewhere or the other dependent. So how to harmonize the taxes so that nobody ends up paying double taxes and you lose business or you lose that opportunity. So that's the primary concept, sir, about how the international treaties work. And obviously it's very detailed and complicated, but I tried to cover it in a very crisp and simple manner. Thank you.
Thank you. Due to limitations of time, we cannot go into further details. Madam Janahi, I believe Indians are the single largest investors in real estate in the Gulf, in the GCC area. And the second largest community are Britishers of Indian origin again. So there's a lot of interest on our part to acquire property in Gulf countries, which is being facilitated by all kinds of policies like golden visas and so on for investors. What are the steps that GCC could take to attract Indian investment into other areas beyond real estate, which is a kind of a natural choice for a lot of our people?
First of all, I would like to say that the foreign direct investment from GCC to India, it's 24.54 billion from September 2013 to September 24. And this is, I think, a figure that shows the increment of investment spend. For us, of course, real estate is very important. We always say, even in GCC, that if you buy a real estate, it's much better than to keep your cash in the bank. Which is, this is, I say, always say that it is important that to have a real estate to September 24. And this is, I think, a figure that shows the increment of investment spend. For us, of course, real estate is very important. We always say, even in GCC, that if you buy a real estate, it's much better than to keep your cash in the bank. Which is, this is, I say, always say that it is important that to have a real estate. So, for I would like to say that. Can you repeat your answer, your question, because I'm still sleeping.
Early morning today.
Yeah.
No, but there is a lot of interest in investing in that sector.
Yeah.
But we are looking for opportunities in other sectors as
Of
well.
course.
In your economy.
The other sectors which is very important is security, and also the technology, which is now is the trend and the future globally. As I know that Indians, they are brave, and I think they are controlling the world by technology. So we are interested to have more technology, especially like you have here technology cities, which is in where is it? You have two technology cities that Bangalore.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's our dream to have GCC stations or cities, and I of course agree that it should be in Bahrain. And this is a huge capacity and a huge investment for this sector. Cyber security is very important for us. It is very it is a must, we can say. Plus the tourism and medical tourism, it is very important. Where we have in GCC a lot of people coming to India and having their health care in India, but we need more hospitals, Indian hospitals, to be in the region of GCC. And plus that we need also, we know that the big companies, as my colleague said, that it is people to people. So we need more relation. We know that the big companies and big shots, they know the way of their deals and where to go directly. But we need to concentrate on the SMEs part, entrepreneurs part, that we don't have still a clear vision or a strategy for them how to open their lines or the connection for them. By the way, today we have also a delegation, Indian delegation of SMEs government visiting Bahrain since 2 days, and they are continuing for another 2 days, which unfortunately I am not with them, but I arranged a lot of meetings and for them. The delegation is from Vicky people, and they are meeting Minister of Commerce, and they are meeting the central government. So I think they have more and more, and they are meeting the SMEs society and Bahrain Chamber of Commerce. So this kind of one-to-one meetings for SMEs group will help a lot, and to have more trips to GCC to execute what they are in need. I am still requesting the governments of GCC and India to have a vision for the SMEs, and it should be implemented within these years.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mehta,
I'll just add to it, sorry, within 30 seconds. The love for the properties in UAE for Indians is so much that I see more UAE real estate companies putting their roadshows in India than they're back in Dubai. On D3, almost all 365 days in Delhi, you will see either Shobha developers or Imar or Damak, they put a roadshow over there and they are trying to promote. So that's the love of Indians for the properties in UAE. They want to go and live over there because of various reasons. But yeah, that's
Bahrain is a good place to live, and they have a lot of business projects, different new areas for lands, which is next to Formula area and Zangar area. So there is an open opportunities for Indians to come and invest in Bahrain. And I think in Bahrain, when they invest, there is a long-term security for the businesses and strong law for the protection of the investors in Bahrain.
thank you for that attractive invitation to Bahrain.
I would just like to add one point in regard to Bahrain. Other than properties and other than investments, there are a lot of weddings happening in Bahrain of Indians. So it's also become a very popular destination for destination weddings. So you can imagine how hospitable Bahrain is over and above UAE in particular.
Thank you.
Thank you for promoting Bahrain.
Mr. Mehta, investors from UAE will find it very difficult to navigate through India's regulatory environment. I believe an office of Invest India is going to be opened in Dubai as well. But chambers of commerce like yours, how can you assist investors in wading through this forest of ours?
Yeah, I think this is a very, very important question because, you know, like even in last 10 years, we have seen that Government of India's focus has been on ease of doing business. That has been a focal point. We have also seen that how the World Bank ranking from 143 to around 63, India has really jumped to 63 from 143. So many significant steps have been taken by Government of India. However, PHDCCI, we are having a trade facilitation center with us. We have our members who are verified, and we create a platform for visiting delegations from all over the globe who are looking for joint ventures, partnerships with our members. We are having members right from large companies to MSMEs. We have 150,000 companies as our members, and out of which 60% of these are MSMEs. Now, in particular, in last few years, you have seen that how India has become the third largest startup ecosystem in the world. And we have more than 115 unicorns, and most of them, they have come after this pandemic. Now, especially if you look at GCC countries, we see that there is a huge opportunity for service sector. Indian economy is also now, right now, around 60% that comes from services. Therefore, the sector like tourism, tech-driven startups, even healthcare sector, and finance, like chartered accountant, my friend who is here. I mean, these are the services. There can be a lot of synergy between India and UAE. And right now, I think that India is having a unique advantage of the demographic dividend, because around 65% of our population is less than 35 years of age. So we are a young country and vibrant country. And today, if I see even here, we have seen a lot of young people. And let me tell you, with our Prime Minister's vision, which is be a job creator rather than a job seeker, I think GCC countries offer huge opportunity for our tech-driven startups in tourism, in technology, in other services like finance, fintech and all. I think these are the part of even SEPA. So I see huge opportunity. At the same time, let me also assure you that PHDCCI stands committed for any foreign investor who is facing any problem in our country. We will do whatever it takes to be done to make their journey of investment very smooth and welcoming in India. And in this ever-connected, evolving, interconnected world, I think that the beauty of this world is that today, sitting in India, you can market your product anywhere in the world, and with the institutionalized mechanism like SEPA, which we are seeking from many other countries also, these kind of mechanisms are becoming very, very popular, and they are the future, they are the future vehicles for our economic synergy, trade, and especially with GCC countries, which is, especially the SEPA, which is based on innovation, sustainability, and inclusivity. These are the three significant pillars of our SEPA. I think that with this, we can take it forward. At the same time, we at PHDCCI and many other trade bodies like us, they can definitely play a very significant role in making the investment, in making the journey for the investor very, very enjoyable, so that they enjoy the biggest market in the world, which is India. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe, Mr. Dhanuka, that for every square kilometer in GCC, we have more Indian chartered accountants there than we have for equivalent areas in India. And you are heading the Kuwait chapter of the Institution of Chartered Accountants of India. What is happening in terms of alignment of accounting standards between that region and India?
So, just to give you a very practical example, now the fundamentals of accounts don't change. However, the reporting varies usually from country to country based on the reporting format they use. So IFRS is the International Financial Reporting Standards, which is being used in almost 168 jurisdictions today, and Kuwait is one of them. However, India used to have Indian, I think it's Indian Generally Accepted Accounting Standard, which is now moved to Ind AS. So they are converging themselves to go to IFRS. So it's broad convergence. So why am I trying to discuss about it? Like today, how many of us wants investment in your respective countries or companies in India? I think all of us. That's why we are here, to promote the bilateral trade. Now, how does a company know who's investing? The first line of defense is to read their financial reports. So if they are standardized, decision making becomes simple. So I feel when I moved to Kuwait in 2013, I joined in EY Kuwait, I never felt the gap. It was just a transition because the fundamentals of accounting doesn't change. What was the difference was on the reportings. The reportings are relatively different in the Indian ecosystem versus IFRS or the Kuwait ecosystem. So with the passage of time, people learn, evolve, etc. But broadly the concepts are same. And the effort of the Indian government, or I would say the accounting associations here, to move from the generally accepted accounting principles to the IFRS convergence has really helped in standardizing, and it's a great attempt. And it also creates a lot of job opportunities because acceptance becomes easy. So just to give you a context, like there are 500 chartered accountants in Kuwait, which is the third largest in the world after Dubai and Abu Dhabi. So it is just to give you an example that Indian chartered accountants or the accounting professionals per se can easily find a job there because of standardization. However, if for example it was a US GAAP, which is totally different than the two, then you need to redevelop yourself. And of course, even today, people need to keep upskilling. There are a lot of changes happening in respective countries. So we are standardized to a great extent. The fundamentals are same, and taking the stage as an opportunity. Anybody want to come in the accounting field in Kuwait, feel free to contact me.
Thank you. Such private commercials are also permitted.
This is a voluntary help I'm getting.
This is in the interest of India-GCC, trade and economic relations. Nothing to know about that. But Mr. Ajay Thampy, there's more perhaps of perishable goods, pharmaceuticals, fresh produce that is part of our trade with this region. So what is happening in terms of technology and port facilities, especially on the western coast of India?
Yeah, before that, I'll just touch upon Bahrain and the chartered accountancy. Because Bahrain is again a gateway port to Saudi. So a lot of companies are putting up offices in Bahrain because it is a tax haven place. So, and recently there was an economic development board team also sitting here. They also had a roadshow in Bombay. So every country is, it's not competing each other, but then infra plays a vital role. And especially with the air and sea connectivity. So with airport giving the seamless operation to the seaport and then taking it forward. So the seamless operation ensures that okay, it is coming to a hub and it is distributed within a short timeline. So that way also Bahrain was one factor. So I'm an ambassador to you just for a few seconds. And then when tax was introduced in UAE especially, because India we have the most complicated way, even though it's not no harm in we have the GSTs, everything been rolled out, but then we have that challenges also. But then when it was introduced in the UAE, a lot of Indian professionals have set up because they have got the know-how taking care of Indian way of functioning, but then things might be seamless. And coming to the question of perishable, because India again it is a producer of perishable goods, even in the normal thing, and the accessibility to the GCC, the infra, especially with the port privatization. Earlier, as I told you, it was only the NVOCCs or the feeder operations. But then, due to a lot of the calamities happening, the major carriers, like you name the CMAs, MSCs, Maersk, they all are now looking at this short haul by bringing in their own vessels also, which is of a smaller capacity. So what has happened is, earlier we had this dedicated services catering India to all these GCCs, but now these ad hoc hauls is now become a dedicated service, which means that all the ports are having more and more frequency. So when you have more and more frequency, perishable is one aspect which has to be taken care. So that way it is all taking forward, and we all know that okay, earlier we didn't have a ready to mix or ready to eat or maybe ready to buy things. So now it's all changing, technology is changing, and since there are a lot of our inmates there, the finished products is also having, earlier a paratha was not available, a dosha was not available. Now it is all available with this perishable equipments, both inbound and outbound. It is not just we are talking from India, because India is also a consuming country in terms of all the finished products. It is not just we talking about GCC, because GCC is also a hub for the European market, the Australian market, the US market. So it all comes into these free trade zones, and we are getting all these finished products into India also. So that is again all temperature controlled. And if you see the major operators, you look at the Emirates, you have the Etihads, you have the Qatar Airways. Maybe we are not taking the Gulf Air or Oman Air, everything, but they are all put up their long capacity into India, and India as a operator is also having a lot of these services, like you take the Air India, you take the Indigo. Everyone is now having these sort of temperature controlled cargo also making a lot of opportunity. So it is not just the perishables we are talking about, but the finished products like the wines, everything which is all coming in needs these sort of things, but then the frequency has made it very competitive.
Thank you. As the principal timekeeper for this session, notice that we have only about 10 minutes left. I think we should open up the floor for questions from the floor. Please identify yourself first, and if you have a question to a specific speaker, can be addressed. I believe there's somebody from Malabar Gold Group who has made a special request to ask questions. Malabar Gold, can we begin with you?
Change, replace. Thank you.
Morning, delegates. I'm audible now. Thank you very much for the insights which you all gave during this session. And let me introduce myself. I'm Dilip Narayanan. I head the Bullion Division for the Malabar Group, both international and India, along with one of the management committee member, Mr. Shafiq. We both are here as a part of the partner for the 2005. Very quick one, introducing Malabar. I'm sure you all know about us because we are present. So it's not basically the question, sir. I mean, just we as exporter, I mean, to all this UAE, GCC countries, we have almost 2,500 kilos, or almost 2.5 tons of gold which we export right now, and we have opportunities to export up to 5.5 tons of gold. I'm only talking about Malabar as such, but there is, as an industry, it has got more potential. There are certain issues which we face, and basically, I'm not sure whether this is the forum where we would be discussing, but this is related. One is related to the minimum value additions which the government, the FTP, the foreign trade policy has put in. The basic gold jewellery is the FTP has put is at 3.5%, and for the studded it's 6%, wherein a local jeweler in Kerala can make this at 1%, and we are selling the same stuff in India at 1.5 to 2%. So adding more value addition is stopping us exporting a lot of quantity to, especially to the GCC countries. That is one of the points which I would like to put it across. Since you're all running out of the time, I'll make it very quick. Second thing is the transfer pricing. Well, we had this discussion. Lack of clarity on transfer pricing. So we have our own company, sir. We have almost 150 stores in GCC, 155 stores as we speak. So we have the capability. Our backward integration is so strong that we have our own manufacturing units in India where we can manufacture and then sell it to our own stores in overseas, which has not been possible because of the lack of clarity of transfer pricing. That's one, and a quick one on SIPA. We would be proud to let you all know, in SIPA, German jewelry plays a vital role, and we were the first, as a retailer and a wholesaler, the first person to export under SIPA and the first company to import under SIPA. Again, in SIPA, in terms of import, the utilization is not done to the maximum. That is something which needs to be looked upon, because there is almost 200 tons of allocation which is done every year, but unfortunately the bifurcation or the way how it has been distributed is not even. So India ends up only consuming around 85 to 90 tons of gold. That's something, in fact, we have also written various letters to the ministry and to the government bodies about this, but I thought that this is the forum where we should mention. To summarize, we would like to say is SIPA has been one of the fantastic agreements which has happened ever, and let us also put this across here in the platform, saying that our exports to GCC has doubled over the period after the SIPA has been introduced.
Thank you very much for that input. Mr. Puri, would you like to respond?
I'll just address the first two parts of your inputs. So when you talk about the FTA or the trade tariffs, you see this is a G2G decision which is there, and how much a state is charging within India is something totally different, because the tariffs are derived or defined based on the international trade market which is happening. So I don't have much to say on this, because this is something which the policy makers have to think of, and if there is a disparity between the domestic market and the international market which is resulting into not letting the gems and jewelry shine in the international market, then probably they have to look at it. Second aspect is related to the transfer pricing. Transfer pricing, I agree with you, is a very subjective matter. It's something which varies from country to country, company to company. It's very difficult to define the arm's length price. What is the price at which you are selling to your own related party and to a third party is something which is very, very difficult to justify to the tax officer. But there are a lot of, now of late we are seeing that there is a lot of development which is happening in this sector, where there are softwares which are doing auto comparison with your competitors. So what is their selling price and what is your selling price, and what are the margins which they are generating? If it is somewhere averaging around that, and recently 3 years ago there was a change in the finance budget in India where a gap of 10% plus minus both sides in the margin is also permitted, so that there is no addition to it. So that's on the I agree transfer pricing is something which is very, very subjective and subject to litigation also. Yeah.
Thank you. The gentleman in the second row here.
Thank you very much. My name is Ashraf from Bahrain Center for Strategic International and Energy Studies, Darasat at Bahrain. Thank you very much for all the speakers. My first question is for my Indian colleague. China has successfully established the Dragon City in Bahrain in 2012, and which is described as a success story. It was established on 11,000 square meters and gathering 750 stores. My question is, does India have a plan to establish same city in Bahrain or in other country? Second question is for my colleague, Ahlam Janahi. You are the president of Businesswomen Association in Bahrain, and we talk about people to people. You have planned to develop the relationship between the Bahrain and India during your institution. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your question, of course. As I said, that we are continuing. By the way, Bahraini and Indians, they are trading since decades. We've been selling pearls and the Indians selling spices to us. This is what's very well-known trade between Bahrain and India. First of all, I would like to say something, that in trade between GCC and India reached US dollar 174 billion, and GCC export to India 91 billion dollar, of course, and GCC imports from India total 83 billion. Now we will talk about Bahrain, as you see. Of course, Bahrain is a gateway to GCC, as you said, and a lot of investors will save the logistics expenses, especially if they have storage areas in Bahrain, as it is a middle of GCC and middle of MENA region for all kind of products. So I think they have to think about the storage areas in Bahrain. There is a lot of facilities that they can, and easy facilities, by the way, in the Salman Mina port and other areas that if they request. Of course, we have a lot of online information through Ministry of Commerce, through EDB, which is chaired by Royal Highness Prince Salman bin Khalifa and bin Hamad Al Khalifa. I think you have a clear vision of Bahrain leaders that to help all the Indian investors to come and invest in Bahrain. Very straightforward laws and logistics. People are helpful and friendly. I believe Indians, they are living in Bahrain, and let me just tell you an information that in 2023, non-oil exports from Bahrain to India exceeded $144 million, which we need to increase that amount in future. And Bahraini investment in India totaling 1.5 billion, 400,000 Indian residents in Bahrain. So I think Bahraini total population less than 2 million. So
Thank you, madam.
it is a huge number that they can, we can support each other. So if Indians are interested, they are more and most welcome to Bahrain.
Thank you, ma'am. Ambassador Venu Rajamani, and see that you've been raising your hand.
Good morning, everyone. We heard a lot about the CEPA and the increase in trade between India and the UAE post CEPA. Is the trade relatively balanced, or is the increase in trade relatively balanced? is CEPA a win-win agreement or is one side?
I don't have a very detailed data analysis on this, but what my experience and understanding has been, it is not balanced because of the import of oil and energy resources into India. Because we import a large quantity of oil and natural gases from GCC countries. That's why, and what we export to them is more on the edible, perishable goods and things like FMCG products. So that is why the value and gems, obviously, as our dear friend mentioned, that gems is one of the largest contributor to the export from India. But then when you compare it with the oil and energy, that is where we are in a net deficit as an importer from the GCC countries.
It is primarily because of the oil. Otherwise, look at the figures in first half of this financial year. There is a trade of around $48 billion between UAE and India, and $31 billion is of course UAE, and 17 is from India. So that way we are in trade deficit primarily because of the energy sources. So otherwise, I think it's good.
To add to it, sir, there are two aspects to it. One is the goods and the services. So if I talk about both of them, and keeping CEPA in mind, from May 2022 onwards, there is a jump of almost 43% in the goods commodity export from India to UAE, and about 58% increase in the service export from India to UAE. That is the result of CEPA. So that's the number which I have with me.
Thank you very much. I'm afraid I have run out of time. In fact, we have exceeded time. However, all the panel members will be here during the day, and you will have opportunity to interact with them. So if we have to stand by the discipline of time, we have to conclude. And thank you very much for being excellent audience.
We now call upon Mr. Shafiq V.S. from Malabar Gold and Diamonds to present the mementos to our esteemed moderator and panelists as a token of our gratitude for their invaluable contribution.